Carina said, I'm Suzanne Mulligan. I'm the Senior Community Engagement Manager at IMEX Group, and Carina is our CEO. So thank you all for choosing to join us here today. We're going to talk a little bit about Planet IMEX, our virtual event, and then also kind of the team's move to virtual, and then we'll discuss our in-office employee engagement program that we're very, very proud of. So if you have any questions, let us know. And yeah, network in the chats, ask us questions, give us feedback, tell us your favorite Netflix series, anything you want to talk about, we love to hear. So yeah, thanks for joining us. So Carina, I know that a couple of times recently we've told the story of the cancellation of IMEX in Frankfurt, and then obviously the blow of having to cancel IMEX America. So let's focus a little bit more on the massive pivot, the worst word, but it does describe what we're talking about. The team made to go from planning live events to virtual events in just a few short weeks. Virtual wasn't something the IMEX team had really any experience in. So how did Planet IMEX come to be?
Yeah, so for us, as soon as we cancelled the Frankfurt show, we gathered as a team and pretty quickly decided we wanted to try to do something virtual. And I think for us, we really tried to think about all the different elements of an IMEX show, which is very multifaceted. You know, we've got the education, we have the networking, but, you know, and we also have the business opportunities, but then we also have all these networking events around the show that the exhibitors put on. We have the IMEX Run. You know, there's so many different elements of the shows. And so what we did actually to try to give us some direction was kind of work out what our key strategic pillars would be for a virtual event. And so for us, we decided, first of all, we wanted it to be a gift to the community, because, you know, if you think about back in March when we were all going into lockdown, it was very emotional, it was very difficult for everybody. The cancellation was difficult. Our industry that we represent, that we serve, was being hit massively. And we just knew that it was, you know, so difficult to lose all those connections. So we wanted it to be a gift. We wanted to try in some way to provide some of the connections that have been lost by not having the show. We wanted it to be unique to us, and also top of mind for us. We just wanted it to be a bit of fun for people. You know, we wanted to bring a bit of joy. We wanted people to go online and then smile. So those are the things that we really filtered all our very many ideas, and there were really a lot, through those kind of pillars. To see what would stick and what wouldn't. And so that's really how Planet IMEX came to be. And that's why we kind of went slightly wild in terms of, you know, creating this 3D world with islands and birdsong and waves crashing, because we wanted it to be a little bit different and we wanted it to be fun.
I think it's the IMEX way to go a little bit rogue, which is great. It makes it a really fun company to work for. Well, so I think probably like a lot of the people that have joined us today, you know, the IMEX team is made up of really passionate live events people. So must have been really difficult to make that transition from in-person to virtual. But could you talk a little bit about any challenges that may have come up, but then also really things that worked well and what we're going to continue to do?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody on the call, I guess, we are live event professionals. So you understand your live event very well. And we kind of understand the jigsaw puzzle of putting together a live event. You know, when friends organize a wedding and they're like, oh, it's so difficult. And for us, it's like, well, it's just like 50 people or it's 100 people. It's not that difficult. And I guess it's the same thing in a way. What we didn't know was like the jigsaw pieces that you needed to put the event together, or all the elements of the event together, in the same way that it's just intuitive for us for a trade show and for our live events. And so that was really difficult. Having to work remotely for the first time for the team and work out how to collaborate and brainstorm, that was, you know, same as everybody went through. And I think we kind of made some decisions in the wrong order. And that was partly the speed at which we were working, you know, and so some of the user journeys were a bit strange, or not strange, but convoluted. They weren't as elegant as we would have liked. And I think this time, one of the things that we've retained is people actually, you know, getting out of their comfort zone, working across teams has been really fantastic. being able to, you know, bring skills to the table that they might not otherwise in their sort of normal day-to-day working life. So all of that we've retained. Things that we did differently was we really took a pause to think about what we wanted from the event, to plan the event, and then we kind of looked at the platforms we would use and the user journey. So we did things for the event that we're running in October. We've done things in a slightly different order. We know why we've made certain decisions, and you know, and we've made them slightly more deliberately based on that sort of customer feedback and the user journey that, and the experience design, if you like, that we want people to have.
Yeah, I think also the coolest thing that, well, I think that we did both for our first Planet IMEX and our upcoming Planet IMEX, is really using some of the IMEX team to be part of the story. So we have a couple of the members of the staff moderating, which we had before. One of the guys from our operations team did a DJ set to finish off the event. And I always remember that moment because it felt like a live event. You know, in that minute, it felt like everybody had come together. And that was such a special time for all of us.
Yeah, it was. And I think because we were in kind of full lockdown then as well, most of the world was, it was special to, you know, see people online from all around the world, just like this really, but just to see it happen in quite a mass scale, it was very nice. And at the end of the day, I think that's what's hard in virtual. It's about creating those connections, and you know, it's a very difficult thing to do, and I think we did it to a degree, and I hope we're able to do that again in October. That's really the aim, because I think that's what we're all missing.
Absolutely. I know I'm really missing it. I've been in the office a couple of times recently. For those of you who don't know, Carina and I are both based in the UK, and we've been able to kind of get into the office a little bit more in smaller groups, and it's just been amazing to get to spend time with the team and actually interact together. And while this virtual world can work and we see it working, I loved getting really quick decisions made. You know, I was able to have 2 conversations in 20 minutes, make 2 decisions, which usually would have taken a bunch of teams conversation. When can you get on a call? What can we do? So that's been really nice about this slight ease back into some sense of whatever the new normal is going to be.
Absolutely. And I'm in the office today. So yeah, and it's great to be back and to see sort of 10, 15, 20 people at a time.
Absolutely. We did actually just have a question come through. What's new with IMEX? So I guess that would be our next Planet IMEX.
Yeah, I think our next Planet IMEX is the newest thing coming up, you know, in the immediate future. What we're doing right now and over the next few months is really working with the venues and our destinations. So we're in Frankfurt next May and Las Vegas next November. And so we've got time now to really work with the venues and destinations on all the new procedures. And we're really re-looking at the entire floor plan, all the experiences, all the feature areas, or the education, and looking at how we can put these on with the regulations that are currently in place. Obviously, we hope that by the time we get to May and November next year, there might be some easing of those restrictions in terms of room capacities and things like that. But in case there isn't, we want to be absolutely ready. And that's, you know, one of the major things that we're doing. But we're also, of course, like everybody else, really looking at what our strategy will be next year. We very much hope that we will have our 2 live shows, but also looking at what the digital element will mean in between and around those shows as well.
Absolutely. And that's kind of, I guess, what the next step is, isn't it? You know, we're committing a bit to virtual learning. I know a lot of kids are going back to school this week and next week. Some are hybrid. We've got virtual conferences, hybrid conferences. I planned a virtual baby shower last weekend. You know, so I think we've got this new virtual world, but how do you think that's going to affect our reliance on face-to-face meetings, you know, in the short-term future, but really in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, the short term is all about the governmental restrictions and travel restrictions, and it's all we have, right? I think, obviously, as the speaker before was talking about hybrid, I think, to be honest, though, if you look at it, I think meetings that never should have, that maybe didn't have a purpose, didn't have a good ROI, they probably will disappear as face-to-face meetings because the ROI isn't there, and suddenly people kind of see that there's a cheap alternative. However, that cheap alternative is just simply not as good as meeting face to face. I honestly think there'll be a big pent up demand to get back together. And I think if you look at what happened in the prior years, like if you think about the digital revolution that we've already come through, we've actually had massive meetings and events brought out of online user groups. And these were like really amazing online communities that decided that just being online wasn't good enough. They actually wanted to meet in person. So if you think about that, you can see that digital on its own is not going to replace face-to-face. But I do think people are going to be very cognizant of the value and the cost and their time, like, you know, like the speaker before said. And the ROI, as it's always been important, maybe that's going to be thought about even more, especially in the medium term, whilst the world, frankly, is in a massive global recession. But in the long-term future, I'm very confident about our industry. I don't believe that the fundamentals of our industry, bringing people face-to-face, being able to communicate your brand values, being able to motivate staff and clients, those things are still better face to face. So that hasn't gone away. That's the fundamental reason why people meet, you know, improving ROI, getting business results. And that sort of strategic focus that meeting planners have been, you know, looking at anyway for the past 10, 20 years just becomes more important in our new reality.
Absolutely. I think
a question about Planet IMEX.
Yes, of course.
So when you decided that you were going to take this whole thing, and you know, we've seen the experience and how amazing it was, who did you bring in for the decision making and to actually do it? Did you do focus groups with the people that would normally have exhibited, or did you just say, here's what we're doing, put a team together, go forth and conquer?
Yeah, the latter, because we didn't have time. I mean, by the time we cancelled on the 11th of March, the team was, the next few days was all about, you know, speaking to clients and getting the team virtual, because we went into lockdown almost immediately. And so by the time we started talking about what virtual meant a couple of weeks later, we had like 6 weeks. So what we did was just bring our team together. You know, our team, I was talking to our sales director earlier, and our sales team have a collective 93 years experience of IMEX, not just in the industry, of IMEX. So we brought our team together. We brought a few key people that we work with, but mainly it was our team, you know, just collaborating really quickly. I mean, what we did actually was we split up all our ideas, if you like, so sort of social activities, education, tech, user experience. We called them bubbles, and then we just went out to the whole company and said, who wants to be in what? Totally optional. About 40 out of 60 of the team were in a bubble or multiple, and then they just went through this really fast iteration process of coming up with ideas, collaborating with the other bubbles or teams, reducing the list, but it all happened sort of simultaneously. It was a bit brutal, if I'm honest. It was really hard, really hard. It was new for everybody. It was emotional. People were in lockdown. We were doing something we'd never done before. So it was really hard. But of course, because of that, it was like all hands on deck, and the team really came together as a result of it.
That's the fun part, that with something like this, no one's an expert. Everyone gets to be a pioneer. So you just run out there and be first.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way that was very freeing, because we could do whatever we wanted. Like we didn't want to fail, obviously. We wanted to be good, but we also knew that we could take a few risks because there was no real expectation, not like our live shows. Everyone has that solid expectation. That's a different type of pressure, isn't it? So from that perspective, it was quite good. And it was also, I felt like it was a bit like launching a new show. So that I kept thinking about the month lead up to the first IMEX America, or the month or two, where we were changing things constantly. We were getting feedback and changing things and reacting. And it was a little bit like that.
So I had a question about when you, so as you're thinking about going live and having a live show, your size of show in your conversations with the Freemans of the world in Vegas, for example, can Can you give those of us that are producing shows some tips and tricks on how to, because the orders that you're putting in for your walls or, you know, versus pipe and drape, for cleanliness purposes, can you give us some tips and tricks on what to order now, knowing it's probably not going to be that next May, and you know, how we don't accidentally put our client in trouble by ordering what's not necessary next May?
So you're talking specifically about the stand build?
Well, about how to work with, what's been your experience working with the convention centers and the decorators, right? The Freemans of the world.
Yeah, I suppose, well, I would say at this point in time, we're talking to them about what those options are. The reality is that everybody's in this together in a way, everybody's learning together. And so my suggestion actually would be to have a very open conversation with the Freemans of the world, with the stand constructor, and work with them so that you can change things probably much closer to the date of the show than you would normally, so that you need a level of flexibility. They need to provide a level of flexibility and options as the regulations change. But I think, and this is how we're looking at it. So for example, for the Frankfurt show, we have all these regulations from Messe Frankfurt, which are relevant for the next 8 weeks. And every 6 to 8 weeks, the government is changing the regulations, and then Messe Frankfurt are coming out with new regulations. And so you know, it's very difficult when you look at a show for next May, we're putting our exhibitor manual together and all of those things. So what we're trying to do is kind of reduce down the unknowns. So we're trying to look at all of that and say, what do we reasonably think will probably still be in place? Or what would we like to keep in place anyway, just from a safety and comfort level, and just kind of reduce down all of those unknowns. So try to get some of it more within our control, because I think that's the difficulty at the moment. Everything feels slightly out of control once you look at how fast everything's moving. And so I'll give you an example for that. At the moment, the regulations in Frankfurt are that if you want a two-way aisle, you need it to be 5 meters wide, which is very wide. And our aisles are usually 3 meters. We've made a decision that we want the majority of our aisles to be 2 meters, because we don't believe that we can enforce one-way systems very successfully in a show like ours, with appointments and, you know, people moving around a lot. So we're currently planning the show with 5 meter aisles, and we know in the back of our mind that we could probably quite easily shift the show back. But at the moment, we've decided let's plan for 5 meters, because that's the biggest impact on our floor plans and on our show and on all the ancillary services, like where we put registration, cloakrooms, or whatever. So we're kind of planning for that worst case scenario. And then we're just having really open conversations with all the suppliers. So hopefully that helps. But I always kind of look at things and kind of look at what can I control, and that's what we try to focus on.
So does that will then impact the number of show participants, the number of exhibitors?
Well, that's why there's
floor space, right?
that's why there's a big impact for us, because but we have the ability to go into another hall. So that's the impact for us, is about going into another hall, which we currently use for other services like hosted by a lounge, registration, education areas. So we now need to find different spaces for those areas. So there are a lot of knock-on impacts. So we can still have the similar show floor space, but not all in one place.
I think the other thing we want to talk a little bit today, although if anybody has any other Planet IMEX questions, we're always happy to talk about Planet IMEX or our Frankfurt and Vegas shows next year, which we're incredibly excited about. But I did want to talk to you, Carina, a little bit about sort of obviously my pride and joy within IMEX, but I know it's something you've been so passionate about over the last 2 years. But we launched an internal employee engagement program, which I have to say 2 years ago when we launched it, I knew it would be important. I didn't realize that we'd be in a global pandemic 2 years later with an entire team working virtually and how much that would affect us. But do you want to talk a little bit about the highlights of the program pre-COVID and sort of why you decided to put so much time, energy, and budget into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing some of the things in hindsight that you do that really come to fruition in a situation like this, and that's certainly one of them. And we did lots of little things, you know, from what we called random acts of fun. So people come into the office and maybe if it, you know, there'd be a barista there, you know, making them coffees, or we had Love Day on Valentine's Day. We just celebrated lots of moments during the year and surprise moments with little things that just made a really big difference. We introduced a recognition wheel once a month in our, we have a Monday morning meeting, and once a month we do a recognition wheel. We also started using Culture Amp to sort of gauge the engagement across the business and also within each team, and then talking very openly about those results and then putting in place specific initiatives to try to improve those. So we saw they were pretty high scores to begin with, but we saw them go up and change, and doing things like the town hall meetings. So all of that, I think, stood us in very good stead, because I think we understood what engaged the team well, better, if you like, than 2 years previously.
Absolutely. And then obviously when we did have to basically put everybody into virtual working from home situation, and we were able to use quite a lot of that. And I think, you know, you and I spoke a lot in those first few weeks about our goals for the team. And I look back now and remember when we were like, you know, 6 to 8 weeks at home, and then we'll have a big party to welcome everyone back. And now we're 6 months on. But so what were your goals in those first few weeks of working from home when it comes to the engagement side?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously the first thing was just keeping the connections. So for those who don't know, we're based in Brighton, on the south coast of the UK. We have about 60 people, and we're largely all office based. So whilst the team travel a lot, they always come back to the office. We don't really have much remote working, like maybe 1 day a week or whatever. So, you know, for us, it was really different to not be together. So the first thing was really just keeping those connections. The other thing was just reassurance for people. You know, obviously everybody had a different reaction to lockdown, and making sure people realized that they felt that they were valued, that they could have flexibility. You know, all of those things were really, really important, and just keeping that communication going, especially, you know, the week that we went from essentially saying that Frankfurt in May was definitely going ahead to literally a week later having to cancel was a very intense week. And as a team, we were all together, and we were actually having team meetings 2 or 3 times a day to keep people up to date. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't lose that sort of connection that we've had during that period.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things was using the Culture Amp surveys, and we allowed the team to really ask any and all questions that they had. And some of them were hard questions to be asking. You know, we were worried about our jobs. People were asking, you know, about longevity of the company. And we basically just did them almost every other week. We were doing them 2 or 3 times a month at one point to really get people feeling as safe as possible. And I thought that was great. I loved that our chairman, Ray Bloom, called every single member of the staff in those first 3 weeks to check in on them, see how they were doing. So I thought that was a really nice way to do it. And talking about sort of what we've done and then what we're going to be doing, is there anything that you really loved that we've done in the last couple of months that you'd like to continue when we do get back to the office?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of great things. You know, we've kept up with things like the recognition wheel. We've also used this time for staff training. So we've done, we were doing 2 weekly Q&As. We brought in like Steve O'Malley from Marriott, Don Welsh from DI, you know, and loads of speakers and partners really from around the industry to give our team sort of insight into different sectors of the industry, you know, because some of our team is sort of maybe focused on ops or, you know, specific side of sales or hosted buyers. So we wanted to do that. That went down really well, and that's definitely worth us carrying on with. we did some sort of virtual team building activities, escape rooms, quizzes, things like that. My personal favorite was the first one we did, which was our Pets on Parade. So we did like a pet show. So that was great. And you know, one of the most simple things that we've done is just what we've called spread some sunshine, and people just get a bouquet of flowers, and it's totally random. And that's just been really nice, and that I think that's meant a lot to people.
I agree. We're actually about a week away from our last staff members getting the flowers. So again, originally we had thought, oh, you know, we'll really do it for the people who might be feeling vulnerable and have been struggling a little bit more. And now every single member of the staff has gotten flowers through their letterbox, which is a really lovely thing to do. So we are very close to the end here, but I did have, we're hoping, we'll see how many questions we can get in before Heidi tells me to stop completely.
There are a few I could see on the chat, so we could go through those.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the ones that came through is who do you think is going to be first to go back to live shows, buyers or exhibitors?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, the exhibitors, you know, our team, and one of our sales teams on now, so hi, Dan.
Hello.
Our team have been chatting to the exhibitors and to the buyers. And the great thing is that on both sides, people are keen to get back to their live events. They really are. But of course, they need to know that safety and security is there, that it's being done in the right way, and that people can travel. You know, but you know, our exhibitors are really, really missing the interaction with the buyers. You know, because they need to get back to selling their properties, selling their services. It's critical. So I do think, you know, being in this industry, we want to get back to our events on both sides. But, you know, we need both parties to come to the table in order to have successful events.
Absolutely. I'm going to try to sneak in another question before Heidi tells me to stop. So one that came in, I know you mentioned, and obviously that we're going to, with the 5-meter halls, we're going to have to kind of move or use a second hall that we've used for other things before. So can you talk a little bit about maybe the changes in event design or the format of the show that we're going to be doing because of the new regulations?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're looking at all of that at the moment. I think for us, what's really important is we're trying to really think about the flow of people through the show. In Messe Frankfurt venue in particular, and the halls we're in, we tend to have people coming in from different directions, depending on whether they get a taxi, a bus, or public transportation to the show. There are kind of 3 different areas and people can cross. So at the moment, what we're talking to the venue about is how we have a more singular flow, so we have less crossing of people. And I think for us, it's about, you know, how we can spread out the show and all of those services so that we can just increase the space that everybody has at the show, reduce crowds, look at maybe having timings for people to come in and get themselves set up, have multiple entrances into the hall, say for exhibitors. So we just look at how do we disperse the crowd really? How do we make sure people are really comfortable when they're coming in and they're in the show? So we don't have that finally designed yet because there are different options that we're going through with Messe Frankfurt. But that's what we're looking at in Frankfurt. Obviously our Vegas show at Mandalay Bay is next November, so we have a little bit more time. Being at Mandalay Bay, we also have more space than we had at the Sands, which is very fortuitous, and lots of different entrances again. So we'll be looking at how we spread the show and all of those different services out so that we can just give people the space that not only we need to give them, but we think that they will want to have to feel really comfortable. I mean, that's the thing. We want everybody to have a great experience and feel comfortable. But with that, I was at an event last week in Berlin. I was at my first conference. It was a hybrid conference. I was able to travel there. And I think one of the things I really learned there was that with the distancing, with the masks, we really have to think as event organizers about the experience that we're delivering to the people that come on site, and everything from, you know, how we engage all the senses. And we've always thought about that experience design, and I can see from the chat there are some sort of planners on here who are experience designers, but I think that is going to be absolutely critical to create the atmosphere that is lost, frankly, when you don't have crowds, when you're distanced from people, when you have a mask on. How you help people to interact, how you create atmosphere is going to be really critical.
I absolutely agree. I loved following along with your experience on the event. So, well, that is all of our time. So thank you so much for joining me as always, Carina. It's lovely to chat with you.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for all your questions. And, you know, if you have any others, you know, just let us know through the event, or connect with us by email.
And will you two be able to spend any time in Central Park after, if people want to join you there?
Yes, yes, if I can. I was not able to get into the main event, actually, so if you can connect me, then I'm very happy to do that.
Thanks, me too, Heidi.
Okay, I probably will do that through email when I put up the transition slide, and I'll go that way. But thank you guys, everybody. Please, we're going to do a silent, well, thank you, everybody. If you want to turn your camera on, go into gallery view, and everybody can see who's here. And we really appreciate it. All of us meeting planners are, you know, freaking out a little when we're going to get back and how. So, and you guys are a little ahead of the US, so we hope to see that.
Absolutely.
Right?
And Germany even more so. So it was great to be there last week, and just see the next stage.
Yeah, we look overseas for hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But thank you guys, everybody who came here today. Thank you, everybody who's here. And we're going to find Carina and Suzanne their way over to Central Park if you want to keep the conversation going. Otherwise, up next, we have the IDE team starting at about 12:50. So I'm going to put on the transition slide and work in the back channel with them. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm also going to put on some music, which decided to be a commercial, of course.
Oh, I can play it real quick.
Right?
Until your commercial's over.
It doesn't,